Hello. So I wanted to come on and do a live session with you guys just to answer some of your questions about sensory processing difficulties, as well as maybe tell you a little bit more about the online training that I've just launched as well, because I think so many of the questions that I'm asked really do revert back to
Let me tell you a little
me
bit more about the online training
empowering
that I've
you
just launched.
about sensory processing difficulties as well. So when we're recognizing and supporting certain characteristics relating to sensory processing difficulties, it's very easy for us to straight away just observe the characteristics. So if it's someone chewing on things or biting things, and trying to recognize, well, why are they doing that? And almost a natural inclination to try and stop them from doing that because other people don't. Now, for people with sensory processing difficulties, we know that by stopping them from getting that sensory input actually makes things a lot more difficult for them because their body's requiring that chew, whether it's proprioceptive, tactile, oral, whatever sensory input it is, their body's requiring that. And so we need to help them to understand which sensory input is it that their body's requiring, and that's our job. So our job is to be that detective and to break down and recognize for that young person, child or adult, whoever it might be, why they're doing that. And we can usually understand that better by looking at more aspects of their daily life. So by not just considering the one characteristic that we observe, so the biting or the chewing, but by looking at other ways that they support themselves throughout their day. So maybe at times when they're eating, or when they're getting dressed, or when they're doing other activities. There's going to be other times where if it's proprioceptive input that someone's requiring by the chewing, then they're going to be finding other ways throughout their everyday life that they will be looking for getting more proprioceptive input as well. And so we can then start to be this detective and break down and look at characteristics throughout their everyday lives that we can then start to support people better, because we've got that better overriding understanding of someone's sensory needs. So if we learn to observe and understand these characteristics in a way that's going to have more of a holistic view, so we're not just taking that one characteristic, we're actually looking at the whole aspect of that young person or adult's lives, then by us having those detective skills, we can work out and identify, well, which sensory systems is it for that person that is overriding, so really, really important for their body to be able to function. So on the Becoming a Sensory Detective course, you will learn all of these skills that I use and that I teach on my workshops, but you can do it from your own home. So wherever you are in the world, and very often there are times where I get emails from America and Australia and China and India asking, when am I coming there? Now, you will know if you follow me on social media, so on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, that I do a lot of traveling. I do travel around the world, speaking at conferences, running workshops, and helping to create better awareness and understanding of sensory processing difficulties. However, I can't be everywhere, partly because, it's not cheap. And so we need to be able to make sure that I can educate as many people as possible in a way that you can access. And so I'm trialing some of these online trainings, and understanding our senses was massively popular. I had over thousands of people that signed up for the training throughout April, which is just incredible. I'm so proud and happy to know that there's so many of you that now have this really good understanding of how our senses function, why we need our senses, and ways that we can start to understand characteristics relating to sensory processing difficulties. So becoming a sensory detective is a training course that I have created to give you the skills that I use ultimately. So it's a really, really good course. You can do it in your own time. You've got access for 3 months. However, if you've got the time, you can get through it in 2 days. There's downloads, there's a video for every section with me explaining and going into detail about the skills. There's worksheets as well as downloads. So there's things that I'm asking you to learn and to do and implement straight away, because if we don't have the opportunity to practice it there and then we might not feel as confident to be able to go and use it and try out this information and knowledge that I've learned with the young people or adults that you support. So you can find out more about that on Sensory Spectacles website. If you go onto the website and you go under the online training tab, you'll have information about the 2 courses, but you'll also have a link that you can click on which will take you to the site. And so it's a separate site where you can read all of the detailed information, so the curriculum that you will learn for both of the courses. Now, I'm also running actual workshops. So our Feel It workshop is our most popular workshop that I run. And I've got workshops coming up before the summer in the UK in Sheffield, London, Birmingham and Norwich. So if you live near any of those places, then why not have a look on the website to find out more information about the dates that I'm coming to those places. But otherwise, I'm constantly answering questions. I'm constantly doing live videos. If you've got questions that you want answered, then please do get in touch and ask me a question. I absolutely love helping parents and professionals recognise and develop these skills for themselves to support everyone and anyone that they might meet and experience in their everyday lives. So I really wanted to do this live video because actually I want to answer more of your questions, and doing it live it's just such a great way for me to be able to communicate with you and to have some feedback with you. You can ask me questions as we go along. I have got some questions already sent to me separately, so I'll start off with those. But if you've got questions that you want to ask now, then drop them in the column on the right hand side. You can chat with me there. I might not be able to reply now as I'm not great at multitasking while I do videos, but I will definitely come and answer your questions later if I don't get around to answering them on the video. So don't forget to share the information about our YouTube channel. All of the videos are absolutely free. We've got over 600 subscribers, which is insane, thinking that I just started these videos to help a few professionals and parents, and now it's just blossomed. So please do share them. It just shows that there's so many people that want access and need access to understanding these sensory characteristics. So please do make sure that you share the information. There's videos specifically for teaching staff, there's videos specifically for parents, but ultimately what I do is help you to understand characteristics. So there's videos explaining why someone may absolutely hate having a bath but love having a shower, why someone may only wear certain kinds of clothing, why someone may cover their ears and speak really loudly, why someone might flicker their fingers. Lots and lots of different characteristics, okay? And there's also interviews that I've done called Bringing SPD to Life with children and adults with sensory processing difficulties, so you can gain that personal insight there and then as well. So the first question that I've been sent is relating to tapping. So it's picking up an object and tapping it, whether it's tapping it on a wall or on a table or on themselves, but otherwise it's holding an object and tapping it. So I've supported many young people and children who create sound, so bang things, tap things, create this sound in order to support themselves. And the reason why they might be supporting themselves can be for different reasons. So it could be that someone is banging and tapping to help them regulate. So by banging and tapping, I'm in control of making that sound. And so it's helping me to reduce out and block out the other sounds that are going on around me. Now, other people may tap because they're curious about that object. So if they've walked into a new space and they pick things up and they bang things, actually by banging something, I'm understanding about the material of that object. I'm understanding about the weight and the scale of that object. There's so many learning aspects to it when we bang things. So it might not be relating to a sensory processing difficulty. It could be that curiosity or that interest. And so we know that some people can use specific ways of tapping an object to get a specific sound. And if it doesn't make a specific sound, a specific frequency, then that's disregarded and we find something else. And then we start tapping that and we try and create that specific sound, that specific frequency. Now, when we think about specific sounds and we think about regulating out other sounds, so managing, controlling, regulating ourselves, then it can be relating to our auditory processing difficulties. So banging or tapping is a really good way for someone who is hypersensitive, so someone who has a really low threshold, finds it really difficult to modulate the sound that they're processing. So it might be that everything's really painfully loud or overwhelming, because all of these tiny little sounds that many of us can filter out, some people are tuning into, and those sounds that they're tuning into can seem at the same volume as someone else's voice. And so just imagine hearing all of those tiny sounds but really loudly, and how quickly you might feel overwhelmed with everything that's around you. Then imagine going into a noisy, busy, unpredictable environment. How might that change? And so you're in this noisy, busy, unpredictable environment and you're hypersensitive to sound. I might cover my ears, wear ear defenders. I want to feel in control of the sound that I'm processing. So by banging or tapping things, I'm the person making the sound. So I'm the person that's able to support myself to block out the sound that's going on around me. If you've been to one of my workshops, you will know that for people with sensory processing difficulties, there's an overriding recognition and need to feel in control. And it's totally understandable. If your environment was so spontaneous in the way that we processed it, I will want to feel in control. So by banging and tapping things, actually I'm the one creating the sound, so I can focus on that sound and find it a lot easier then to be interested in what I'm doing rather than become distracted with everything else that's going on around me. Other reasons why people may bang or tap things can be relating to them understanding about where their body is, their proprioceptive sense, where they are in space. And so if I have a difficulty understanding and recognizing my own where my own body is and my own positioning, then actually by banging, patting, feeling myself, as well as banging maybe objects, so knocking on walls, picking up objects and banging things, I'm actually getting that body awareness, that feedback when I do that activity. And so for some people who tap things or bang things, it can be a really effective way to get more awareness of where their body is and what it's doing, and really feel as though they know where they are. They can feel their feet, they can feel their hands. Some people, when they walk, you might notice that they really do stomp their feet, and they might not recognize that they're stomping their feet. And that's just their body's natural way of recognizing how much force and pressure they need in order to feel comfortable and to balance and to regulate themselves. So when we recognize characteristics relating to sensory processing difficulties, it's really important that we do start to recognize and understand these characteristics that that link to their needs, but also accurately understanding what sensory systems is that related to. Now, if you did do the Understanding Our Senses training, it is still available online, then you will know that we have, I spoke on there about 8 sensory systems. So there's the 5 that we learn about in school. So smell, taste, touch, sight, and hearing. There's also 2 internal senses, which largely we speak about when talking about our sensory processing for people with learning difficulties or support needs, but they're incredibly important for all of us to understand and be aware of. So that's our proprioceptive sense and our vestibular sense. So both of these sensory systems give us information internally about our body. So our proprioceptive sense tells us where our body is in space and how we position it. So it's the feedback you get from your joints and your muscles. Our vestibular sense gives us information about our sense of movement, and it's modulated in our head, so between our ears. Now, we also need we rely on our visual processing to also get this sense of movement. And if you think about when you're traveling in a vehicle, that's a really good way of recognizing that. If you close your eyes while you're moving, it feels very different to when you open your eyes when you're moving, when you're driving. But if you were feeling a little bit sick or a little bit dizzy, if you just come off, some of the waltzers or dodgems at the theme park, if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed with movement, you might also notice one of the first things that you do is you close your eyes. And you might close your eyes and hold on to something, but by closing your eyes, you're then reducing that visual input, which then helps to regulate that. It helps to control the sense of movement that you're feeling. So our vestibular and our proprioceptive senses are massively important. And then the other internal sense, which is becoming a lot more popular and really, really important, is our interoceptive sense. And that tells us information from inside of our body relating to maybe when we're hungry, when we're tired, when we need to go to the toilet. So there's so many aspects of our life that we can relate our interoceptive sense to. However, our interoceptive sense, its whole focus and aim is for homeostasis, so self-regulation. My body wants to feel at its optimum. And we might have difficulties with recognizing interoceptive sense because someone may find it difficult to self-regulate. So prior to self-regulation, we are taught to regulate through co-regulation. So it might be through our parent, or it might be through a caregiver who helps us to support ourselves as we're developing. So as a baby, maybe I cry, and that time that I cry, I'm hungry, so I'm fed. Another time that I cry, might recognize that I'm feeling a bit cold, so I'm wrapped in a blanket. Another time I cry, I might be really tired, and so maybe I'm rocked to sleep. So each of these requirements that my body has, I am supported to meet my needs. So I am fed, I am kept warm, so I'm wrapped in a blanket, and I am rocked to sleep. However, as we get older, we learn to regulate for ourselves. And this just comes from lots of experience of this idea of homeostasis and feeling at my best, at my optimum. So our interoceptive sense is massively important, but can be incredibly difficult for some people to recognize these sensory messages. If someone has difficulties recognizing things like hunger, we may recognize characteristics of emotions. So, people getting angry, people becoming frustrated. And this is something that actually you may well be able to recognize through a lot of people in your lives. So, you probably know someone who gets hangry, so they become angry when they're hungry. And that's because their body hasn't yet recognized that they're hungry, but yet the response internally from that is an emotion. And so there's the anger there. When someone eats, they become a lot happier, their body's getting what it needs. And so it's almost this subconscious, this subtle way of recognizing my body needs something, but I don't know what it is. And so that emotional response to it. So a lot of young people that I've supported who have difficulties with recognizing this in these internal messages, we might also recognize having difficulties managing and recognizing and regulating emotions. And that's purely because of the way that we process that sensory information. So, our 8 sensory systems are all massively important to consider, and we do have to consider them all when we're looking and we're observing characteristics relating to SPD. So, another question that I was asked was relating to chewing. So, chewing, we might think about when we're eating. We might know someone that chews on an object, or chews on their finger, or chews on their clothing. Now, all of these can be for very different reasons. And so, this is again why it's really important to start to break down and identify the sensory systems that can be involved with each of these characteristics, and use those detective skills that I teach you on becoming a sensory detective. So, if someone's chewing on an object, try and identify, is it chewy? Are they getting lots of feedback from their joint? Or are they crunching on it? Are they just putting it in their mouth? We really do need to accurately recognize what exactly it is that they're doing. So by chewing on an object, there's lots of proprioception. I'm getting lots of joint and muscle feedback when I'm doing that. It might be tactile, so if someone's holding the object in their mouth and moving it around, then maybe it's for that tactile sensation. Other people might chew on things that are of a particular consistency, so crunchy things. So maybe that's to help to reduce and block out sound, or it might be to give them more sound because their jaw's right by their ear. So when we chew, we actually get a lot of that auditory input as well. Um, Otherwise, when someone's chewing on things, so if it's clothing, we need to recognize, are they actually getting any flavor sensation from what they're chewing on? Is it clean? Is it something which they wear regularly? So school jumpers, for example, may well be cleaned with a washing detergent, washing powder, but it might also be um, a certain kind of texture or chewiness of it. And it might not be a chew, so you might recognize that it's more of a suck. And so thinking about taste and smells really, really important also for that. So accurately recognizing and identifying these characteristics is the most important thing. So chewing on things, it could be proprioceptive, it could be tactile, it could be auditory, it could be smell, it could be taste. So that's 5 out of our 8 senses. It may well be interoception, because interoception is telling us about when we're hungry. It might be that someone's body feels like it's constantly requiring food. And so by chewing, I'm getting that sensation, that interoceptive input. So if I was to just presume that it's that proprioceptive input as to why someone is chewing, so the feedback I'm getting from my joints and my muscles, I might totally misunderstand another aspect of their sensory needs. So this is why it's really important that we observe other times throughout their day. So it might be that I observe meal times. It might be that I observe while they're in the classroom or while they're with their friends. What other things do they do that supports their sensory needs? So are there other things that they do where they get more joint and their muscle feedback? Are they quite heavy-handed? Do they bump into things? Do they wear certain kinds of clothing to help them to feel where their body is? Because this will help me to identify, is it proprioceptive or is it a different sensory system that we can support? Once we've recognized someone's overriding characteristics, it's really important then to think about all the other aspects of their day. Yes, that it's all proprioceptive, but maybe it's different parts of their body that they're requiring that input. So it might be upper body, it might be facial, so my jaw, my muscles, might be with my feet, it might be with my legs. And so once we can recognize that, that's when we can start to specifically personalize the activities and the way that we help to provide that sensory input for the person that we're supporting. Once we can identify someone's overriding sensory needs, you may well probably recognize other characteristics that they enjoy or that they do where they're also getting that sensory input. So things like, I know so many gymnasts, I know so many sportsmen that are in those professions and love those activities because that's when they really are feeling where their body is and what it's doing. And so by being a gymnast, it's a natural way for me every day to get this body and joint feedback that my body requires. So when I emphasize the importance of not just identifying this one characteristic and trying to problem solve that, it's about recognizing, okay, I've recognized this characteristic. What else can we recognize as well? Because there will be other things that we need to consider and associate that relate to the sensory processing difficulty. When we're understanding that better, that's when we might start to recognize other things that they do during their everyday lives to support themselves. So it might be in their bedroom, they absolutely love colour and they love stickers and they love patterns. So it might be that they have really jazzy wallpaper. It might be that the wall's covered in their drawings and their illustrations and their colour. And they may be a visual seeker. And so for that person, yes, it might just seem like a hobby or an interest that they have. But a lot of the time, for people with sensory processing difficulties, it's going to tie into every aspect of their daily lives. There's preferences that I have of my sensory input, and it's very similar. If someone enjoys a particular sensory input, so really enjoys visual inputs, that's where we might recognize someone who's really talented at illustrating or drawing, or someone really talented at identifying errors in coding and works for a big technology company and helps them to problem solve in a specific job role. So we can use the understanding that we have relating to sensory processing difficulties and put that into everyday functionality. And that's what's really, really important. A lot of the adults that I support have careers, have professions where it is linked to the sensory needs that they require and that they recognize as they have been growing up. I know many people that are self-employed because it's a lot easier to manage the working environment when someone's self-employed. I know people that work from home because it's a lot easier to manage the working environment when they're at home, whether it's auditory, whether it's visual, whether it's smell, whether it's food, whatever it might be in the environment that is difficult. For a lot of adults, we recognize by that time, these key aspects of their life are actually just amazingly supportive coping strategies that they found that are now part of their everyday lives. Um, Okay, those are the two questions that I've been sent. I have got another one, but I've spoken a little bit about interoception and it was relating to interoception. So I hope that's been helpful. Don't forget, there's so many more videos on this YouTube channel that you can share, that you can um, spread more awareness, more understanding, more knowledge about sensory processing difficulties. My whole aim is to create better awareness and to educate more people about it so that then we can support people better. So please do support me in sharing this information. Like I said, there's lots of information on the website as well, and I am on all forms of social media. I'm at an end of an email, so if you do have any other questions that you want to ask me, then please do get in touch. I love hearing from you. But otherwise, I will be back live again soon. It may be on Facebook, it might be on YouTube, wherever it is. I hope that I see you again soon, and good luck with all of your sensory discoveries and becoming a sensory detective. Okay, take care.